What's up? Welcome back to Space Arena Ground Arena. Today we are going to look at I did a video last week, I think, on stuff for set 3 that was relevant and how you can upgrade it for set 4 with some new cards. Now we're going to take a look at some of the decks from Jump to Lightspeed. So with the new leaders and new cards that we can play, that you can play to get a head start and win your local scene, be the big fish in the little pond. So I will share my screen here and we will get started. First one we're going to look at, I'm playing the odds. It is a Han 3 deck. It's our third Han leader. So he has an action. You can reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an odd card that has the different costs of a unit you're attacking with, it gets +1. All right, so the action, you reveal a top card, you attack with a unit. If they have different odd costs, then that unit attacks for +1. He deploys on 6 resources, and he can be a 3/7 ground unit, or he can become a 3/4 +3/+4 upgrade on a vehicle. And when you deploy him, for each friendly unit that has an odd cost, you can ready a resource. So if you build your deck like I have, where it's all odd costs, you can ready a bunch of resources. So you can go, you can get a big swing, kind of like the old Boba Fett deploy turn, where you can go like +3. That's pretty common here, where you can go like +3 resources. So we're pretty heavy on the odds with the 1-drops. We're running 8 1-drops with Cartel Turncoat, Greedo, and Wolfpack Escort. Trying to play 2 1-drops as much as possible because I don't have any even cards in here. Then we got the new blue leader. We got Boshek. He works really good with Han because when he is played as an upgrade, you discard cards from your deck. I think it's 2, and if they're odd cost cards, you draw them. And then we have the Guerrilla Soldier. It's a 3-cost unit. When played, it deals 3 indirect damage to your opponent. If any damage done to the base, you can ready it. 2 Leias, because she has some restore and some synergy with pilots. We have some pilots in here. Old Falcon, new Falcon, because we can run 2 pilots, and we are running Chewie and the new Han. So you can get this as a big, beefy, tall unit that you can swing for lots of damage with. 2 copies of the Shuttle Tidarium. On attack, you discard a card. If it's an odd card, you give an experience token to another unit. 2 Sundari, 2 Tech, 2 Never Tell Me the Odds. If you don't want to Never Tell Me the Odds, is you discard 3 cards from your deck, and your opponent discards 3 cards from their deck. You count the number of odd cost cards, and you deal that much damage to an opponent. So most times this is going to hit for 4 to 5, sometimes 6, but most of the time it's 4 to 5. 3 resupply, 2 Waylay, 3 new Chewie. Great pilot we can put on all of our Falcons. 2 new Han legendary unit. If you're unsure what the legendary Han does, when deployed or when played, normally he's a 4/5 with ambush. When you play him as a pilot, it costs 2 to play him as a pilot, and you can attack with an attached unit. If it's the Millennium Falcon, it deals its damage before the defender. So you get like a one-time first strike out of it, which is pretty good. Yeah, and then Chewie as a pilot, he can't be bounced back to hand or defeated with effects, but he can still be damaged with like Daring Raid and Overwhelming Barrage and stuff. We're running 1 copy of the new Mandalorian. We want to play him as a pilot 9 times out of 10, and when we do, he can exhaust a space unit. 2 copies of Marauder, 2 Enfys, 2 original Han, and 2 U-Wing. And then in the sideboard, I do a Bamboozle, because having access to a card that just says defeat your leader when you're playing with pilots is pretty good. 2 Timely to get some more ambush in for some of these things. 2 copies of the 1-cost card Jam Communications that lets you discard an event from an opponent's hand. Yeah, this deck is pretty fair though overall. I don't see it taking over the meta as a whole, mainly because Django exists and Django just pretty much doesn't let this deck do what it wants to do. Django can be pretty oppressive into this because this is pretty fair. This is too fair of a deck, I think. But it can spike, and you can get those games where like your Falcons are big and you're deploying Han, and you have the Chewie plays, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. This deck's been a lot of fun. It's a solid deck, but I just think with like Django and some of the other unfair decks, I just don't think this is going to take over the meta. But I wanted to start with this one because it is like a pet project of mine, and it's been a lot of fun playing with it. But yeah, I don't think it's going to take over the meta, but it is fun. Shuttle Tidarium, I'm still iffy on, but I was jamming all the synergies I could in here. Next, we have Game of Chrome Domes, the Phasma ECL deck. Been having a lot of fun with this deck. This deck is pretty fun. I think it's definitely more competitively viable than the Han deck, but I still think this deck's overall just too fair. But we're running 3 of the new First Order Stormtrooper. We're running a bunch of First Order stuff because Phasma, if you don't know, has an action. If you played a First Order card, you can deal damage to a base. And then on her deployed side, she's an on attack. If you played a First Order card, you can deal damage to a unit. And then if you do, you can deal damage to a base. And then she is like a 4/7 or something when she deploys. So she's a pretty beefy unit. She deploys on 5. And I feel like most competitively viable leaders deploy on 5. So that's what that other Han deploys on 6, and now she deploys on 5. Pairing it with ECL because we have a couple good ECL targets here, but I'm running 3 copies of Outflank currently because I did find in some games so far I'd get into the position where I'd have like Phasma leader plus another thing, and I need to be able to swing with both to like win the game. I was finding that I was coming up in action short in some games. So I'm running the 3 Outflank now as a way to close the game so I can make up that action. I'm running 2 copies of the General Pride. So on attack, if you have the initiative, he deals 2 indirect damage, and then he has a static ability that when you do indirect damage, if you do indirect damage to a unit, you can defeat a non-unique upgrade. So you can defeat pilots that aren't unique. You can defeat shields, experience tokens, stuff like that, and it's not like capped out at cost. 1 copy of General Hux. He's a 1/4, but he gives all your other First Order stuff raid 1, and then he does have an action. If you played a First Order card, you can draw a card. So he's a way to get some cards, but he was just kind of a little too slow. So he's down as a 1/of. 3 copies of Kylo's TIE, 2 copies of the Special Forces TIE Fighter. So that's a First Order TIE Fighter. It's a 2/3 for 2, and when played, if your opponent controls more space units than you can ready it. 2, the Black Sun, the 3/2 for 3 with Sentinel. Just I feel like I needed something in space to slow down like Django and some of the Poe and Luke stuff I've been running into. So I just needed a way to slow some of them down. So that's why that's in here. 3 copies of the Emperor's Royal Guard 3/4 Sentinel because we are running the Hux and the General Pride. So they're official, so we can get the Sentinel there. You could probably just run the Phase 3 Dark Trooper if you wanted, but there is the ability to get Sentinel here, so I like the 4 health. 3 copies of Super Laser Tech. I'm not going to say much there. We went the ramp. 3 copies of Von Reg's TIE. It's a 3/4 most of the time. It's going to stay a 3/4 unless we buff it with the 5-drop Phasma or Overwhelming Barrage. But it is just a really solid 3/4 space unit, and it is First Order, so we can have the other synergies with Hux potentially, but mainly the Phasma pings and the 5-drop Phasma. So 3 resupply, and then we're running 3 of the Captain Phasma. Really good unit, 5-drop, 5/6, and when played and on attack, you can give another First Order unit +2/+2 for this phase. So this is a really good ECL target. If you can deploy your leader and then ECL this in, you can make your leader a +4/+4 for the phase, which is pretty strong. And then when you combine that with the Kylo, that is a 6-drop that on attack can give a unit +2 for the phase. So if you get to like that turn 6, turn 7 part of the game, and you can have both Phasmas and Kylo run out, and they're just buffing each other. That's like the dream. You're dealing a bunch of damage. 3 copies of Ruthless Raider, and then 3 copies of Planetary Bombardment that hopefully we can pair with the Ruthless Raider. 1 copy of Vader, and 2 copies of Maul. Maul is really the closer if Planetary Bombardment and Ruthless Raider don't get us there. The sideboard, we're running Power Failure, just straight up defeats upgrades. 3 copies of Champs and Dula in the sideboard, so if we miss our ramp or we're playing like Piet or Han or other decks that are going to ramp over us, Champs away, we can make that up. 2 copies of Traitors, 2 Palpatines, and a crate. So this is Phasma. This deck's been a lot of fun. It's been one of the new decks, probably one of the 2 leaders I've played the most, this one and the new Boba Fett. So I'm a big fan of both those decks, and Phasma is probably the first one I'm gonna like sleeve up and take to locals. I've been having a lot of fun with it so far. Next up, we have Peter Pan's Shadow. I don't know why I named it this, but this is a Poe ECL deck. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on this one. There are some cards in here that I would add. I was really trying as many new things as I could in here. I think Poe is an interesting leader, so if you're unfamiliar with Poe, which I think if you're watching this you probably are, but as a leader, he just has an action that for 1 resource you can flip him and attach him as an upgrade to a vehicle without a pilot on it. And then, so then he's a +2/+1. If you deploy him normally, he's a 4/6, and then he has an action. You can attach him for 1 to a unit without a pilot on it, and you can only use it once per round. So he has this really interesting ability where he doesn't have to deploy to become an upgrade. He can just use it. He's not considered a leader unit though, so there's a little caveat there. All the other leaders that are pilots, they say like, hey, this attached unit is a leader unit. Poe doesn't. So he can be hit with stuff like Merciless Contest and like Fell the Dragon and those other things that specify like non-leader units. If he's on that, he's not protected from like this unit is a leader. But yeah, so he has this ability to just jump between vehicles. So you can jump between vehicles. If he gets defeated, then you can play him again like next turn. You can deploy him, swing, and then use his action because you don't have to exhaust to use the action. But yeah, so like after you deploy and defeat it, if you attach him to a unit, then you can attach him to another unit. So you can like jump him between vehicles, which is pretty interesting. But some cards that I would add in here that I don't have in here are like the 5-drop Poe and Wreckers. I would probably have in as a late game. The BB-8 and the R2, I definitely don't think you need 5 of them. Maybe 2 of one and 1 of the other. I do some kind of split there with them. And Nia Nub, just a lot of 1-drops here, but I was really just trying to push in early to see what's what with this. Rebel Assault's really good here with all the Rebel vehicles we're running. Eject is a cheeky way that you can get Poe out multiple times as like a 4/6 leader. So like on turn 2. So like if you play like a 2-drop space unit turn 1, and then turn 2 you attach Poe to it, and then you can swing with that unit, and then you can play Eject, and then you push Poe to the ground arena, and then you have like a free leader on turn 2 that's a 4/6, which is pretty strong. So there's some cheeky stuff you can do with Eject, and then it's just good units. Red 5's a good unit, Red 3's a good unit, the blue leader's a good unit, Chewie's a good unit. So like there's a lot of good stuff here. This deck rewards really good sequencing. You really got to think ahead and see your lines really well with this deck. But I definitely would add like Wreckers and Poes as like late game ways to end the game. But it is a fun deck. I think you'll definitely see it because it can go very fast. I just haven't spent a whole lot of time on it. This is where I was testing it. But this is like a starting point you can use to build from here. I'd probably retool the 1-drops for sure and look to add Poe and Wrecker. And then you got the makings of a pretty solid red-green deck where your leader sees the board more times than other leaders. Next up, we have Architect of Destruction. It's a Thrawn deck. Thrawn green, so like most people, I was trying Thrawn red. I think most people were trying Thrawn red early. I definitely was. And it was like, hey, what do we do in a blue-green control shell? I don't know if this is better than Kira. I don't know if it's better than Krennic. But I do know it is fun and it has some tricks. So Thrawn, when you use a when defeated ability, you can exhaust him and do it again. And then Director Krennic, the new 2-drop, is shielded, and the first card you play with a when defeated ability costs 1 less. So for those, we have the Inferno 4, the Onyx Squadron Brute, which is new, and that when defeated you can heal 2 damage from your base. The Landing Shuttle is a 3-drop 2/4 that when defeated you can draw a card. The Krennic ship, what the heck's that thing called? Can't read it. The Shuttle ST-149 under Krennic's authority. When defeated and when played, you can take control of a token upgrade. So you can steal shields, you can steal experience tokens. And then, so the 6-drop, the CR90 has a when defeated to heal up to 3 damage from a unit or a base. The new Chimera creates Tide tokens. The Fleet Interdictor, when defeated, defeats a unit. So we have a decent amount of when defeated effects here. And then some other plays we have, like we're only running the 1 pilot, which is the new Iden. She's good. You can play her on the ground as a 4/3 shielded unit for 4. And then if you play the Corvus, you can move her. So like on turn 3, you can play Iden. Turn 4, you can swing Iden. And then I like to ECL Corvus. And then you have like a 7/8 with Restore 2. With Iden on it as a pilot. And then it gives the unit a shield. I'm pretty sure, right? So that's a strong combo, the Iden Corvus combo. Running the calculated lethality, that's been pretty good so far because it defeats a unit that costs 3 or less, and any upgrades that were on it, you can give a unit experience token. So we can defeat those rebel ships that people are throwing pilots on, and then we can buff our own units. 2 copies of the No Glory Only results. Those are really good in a Django. In any deck that's running Ruthless Raider, you can steal it, trigger the when defeated on Ruthless Raider for yourself, and then with Thrawn, you can do it a second time. Running Vader, so Vader into Death Trooper is a good way to deal with a lot of ground threats. And the Fleet Interdictor is just a pain when it comes down for your units to deal with, and then obviously we're running the Snoke and Avenger top end. This deck has been pretty fun. It's been pretty solid blue-green control deck. Like I said, I don't know if it's better than Krennic. There's a decent amount of healing. With the Onyx Brute, you can get some good heals. You can get good card draw off the shuttle. Have a decent amount of control options and some good units. You can get some units pretty tall if you have Hask out there. And you got your Corvus with Iden. You can get some really tall units. So this deck's fun for a blue-green control deck. I think you should go give it a shot. And the main ECL targets are Hask and the Corvus. And the CR9. You can do the Chimera too, but the CR90, Hask, or Corvus, those are your main ECL targets. Moving on, this is another deck I've been seeing a lot of people playing, is a Piet Fire When Ready. The way we've been talking about this in my play group, is that this is going to be a big mid-range gatekeeper. Like, aggro decks are probably a little too fast for him, but he's going to gatekeep a lot of mid-range decks because he's just going to out-ramp you and punish you with big late-game stuff way faster than you can get there. This could almost be like an Oops All-Star Destroyers deck. But yeah, so I got 2 First Order Stormtroopers, 3 Laurens, 3 Price on your head because we're trying to ramp as much as possible, right? We're going to get to Devastator before you can get to, deploy. That's the goal here. So we got 3 Price on your head, 3 Emperor's Royal Guard, 3 Phase 3 Stormtroopers, or Dark Troopers, sorry. 3 Super Laser Tech, 3 Merciless Contest. So with the Price on your head, we can force the Merciless Contest and force the ramp. 2 Open Fire, 3 Resupply, 2 Revolving Barrage, 3 Traitorous, 3 Resupply Carriers, 3 Ruthless Raiders, 3 Planetary Bombardment, 3 of the Arctic Winds Assault, 2 New Devastator, 2 Relentless, and 2 Old Devastator. So yeah, the goal here is just to ramp super fast as humanly possible. I mean, really, we have 12 cards that just ramp when played, and the Artiquins is another one. So, like, we have an absurd amount of ramp here. But yeah, nothing too crazy. Piet doesn't do anything other than make your capital ships cheaper, and our deck's full of capital ships, and we're going to ramp, play big starships, and blow you out. That's the goal here. But so here's a good starting point for anybody looking to blow out their opponent early in the meta with Krennic. Paper Cuts is what I'm calling this a Boba Fett deck. This is probably, between this and Phasma, like I said, my two favorite new decks of the new set. We're trying to deal as much damage as possible that our opponent can't interact with. 3 copies of First Order Stormtrooper, 2 copies of Greedo, 3 copies of Reckless Gunslinger, and then 2 copies of Daring Raid. So Boba Fett, when you deal non-combat damage, you can exhaust him and deal another one. So that's indirect damage. That's like the damage from the Reckless Gunslinger when played. Daring Raid. Anything that deals damage that's not your dude swinging, that counts and triggers Boba Fett. And then when he is ready to deploy, he deploys on 6. And if you put him on ground, he's a 4/7. And if you deploy him to a vehicle, he's a +4/+4. And when you deploy him as a unit, he deals 4 damage divided as you choose among other units. The 1-drop suite here between the Stormtrooper, Greedo, and the Gunslinger. And the Gunslinger, when played, is like a 2 damage play on turn 1. Play the Gunslinger, deals the damage to both, and then you trigger Boba Fett. So it's 2 damage turn 1, your opponent can't do anything about. And then we'd like to follow that with a Greedo or First Order Stormtrooper, or Daring Raid if we need to. And we're running 3 copies of the, I don't know how to pronounce the Star Hopper. The Zygarian Star Hoppers, the 2/3 that when defeated deals 2 indirect damage to a player. And then we got the Droid Missile Platform. It's a 4/2 and when defeated deals 3 indirect damage. We got the Guerrilla Soldier, which when played deals 3 indirect damage. And if any of it hits the base, then you ready it. So on turn 2, play the Guerrilla Soldier. If they assign any of that damage to their base, you can ready it. So it's like potentially, like I'm running this in Han 1 also now too, the Guerrilla Soldier, and in Han 1 it's like a 5 damage turn 1 play. It's in my rotation of turn 1 plays with Resupply and Falcon. It's a really solid target turn 1 for Han 1, but it's also a really good play in Boba Fett because it deals indirect damage and you can potentially swing for more with it. The Mist Hunter and Punishing Ones, I'm really going like back and forth on a split there. But when I added the droid missile, so I was running like 3 and 3 or 2 and 2 of something else, and then but once I added the droid missile platform and that being non-unique and having so many uniques, I cut down. So we're running 2 Punishing One and 1 Mist Hunter right now for the split there. It could be 2 and 2, it could be whatever you want there, but I like both these units. They have the same stats. The Punishing One's text is more relevant in this set, but Mist Hunter also, getting the card draw is also super relevant, so that's something you can play with there. 3 copies of Torpedo Barrage, so it's 3 cost, deal 5 indirect damage. And all these indirect damages, if it like we can buff it by 1 with Boba Fett, we can exhaust him and deal another indirect. 3 Triple Dark Raid, so we can cheat out some stuff. 1 Waylay at the moment. 3 Dengar. Dengar is, I think, probably the best card in the set. You can think I'm crazy. You can think I don't know what I'm talking about, and that's fine. But Dengar for 4 is a 5/4 if you play him to the ground. But if you play him as a pilot for 2, he gains on attack, deal 2 indirect damage to a player. And then if this is on an Underworld unit, you can deal 3 indirect damage instead. So he gives +1/+2, and he's dealing 2 damage already, or 3. We're going to play him on an Underworld unit. We're going to play him on a Mist Hunter or a Punishing One or a Star Hopper. We're going to play him on a 4-drop Falcon or their other 4-cost unit that's Underworld. And we're going to throw out, like, on a... we'll talk about the 4-drop Fire Spray. I think I said Falcon. But the 4-drop Fire Spray, the new Fire Spray, is a 4/4. And when played on attack, deal 1 indirect damage. If you control Boba Fett, it's 2 instead. So when played, the Fett's Fire Spray, the new one, what I'm calling the 4 spray. So when you play the 4 spray, it's going to deal 2 indirect damage. You can use Boba Fett and make it 3 indirect damage. Then you can play Dengar onto it as a pilot for 2, and then it becomes like a 5/6. And then when you swing, it's dealing 2, 5 indirect. It's dealing 5 indirect damage, 3 from Dengar, 2 from itself, and then another one from Boba Fett. Right, so it's like a 5. It's swinging for 5 to base, and then it's dealing 2, 6 more indirect damage with the Boba Fett ping as well. It's an 11 damage swing of the fire spray with the Dengar. Dengar's ability is just super strong. I love Dengar. He's amazing. I love Dengar. Running 2 copies of another one I can't pronounce. Kamagala Heavy Fighter. It's a 3/4 for 4, which isn't great, but when played, it deals 3 indirect damage, and then you can play Dengar on it as a pilot, and then it's a 4/6, and then it's dealing 3 indirect every time you swing. So you see what's going on here. We're just so all these units, except for the Misthunter and Punishing one, are dealing like indirect damage, and then Dengar deals indirect damage. Boba Fett, the new Boba Fett unit, the 5-drop, it's a 5/4 shield if you play it to ground, but if you play it as an upgrade, when you play it as a pilot, it gives +2/+3, and you can deal 1 damage to a unit. But if it's a transport, then you can deal 2 damage instead. The Mist Hunter, Punishing one, and both fire sprays are transports. So there you go. We have other synergies. We can deal 2 damage to other things. We're damaging everything here. Then we're running the 6-drop fire spray because it's Boba. So we're running 6-drop fire spray. Comes in ready as a 5/6. It's another few. I like to deploy the leader onto this one, and then it's like a 9. Swinging for 9. Pretty nuts. So yeah, 6-drop fire spray. 3 Ruthless Raider. It's just amazing. So 2 Planetary Bombardment to try to really get extra value out of the Ruthless. 2 copies of Cad Bane, and then another Devastator. New Devastator, one of these main board, one of these sideboard. It's an option. We can triple dark rated on 6 resources. And then in the sideboard, 1 Boba Fett's armor, 2 power failure, 2 disabling Fang Fighter, 1 more copy of Waylay, 2 copies of Change of Heart, our 3rd copy of Bombardment, and another Devastator. This deck is a lot of fun. It slaps. It just deals so much damage that your opponent can't interact with. And then you put them in bad situations because, like the droid missile platform, they don't want to take 4 damage, but they're going to take 4 damage anyway because if they defeat it, they're going to take 3 indirect and another one from Boba Fett. The Guerrilla Soldier is also another like crappy situation because you can only assign as much indirect damage as your units have health remaining. It's unpreventable. So it's like a great answer to like a Krennic or a Crafty Smuggler. If they put that damage on the base, then you're getting another 2 free damage. And then between the Torpedo Barrage and Planetary Bombardments, and on top of all the other pings and indirect damage and stuff we're getting, it's paper cuts, death by 1,000 cuts. So that's why I call it paper cuts. So this one I'm having a lot of fun with. Like I said, this one and Phasma are my 2 favorites right now. This deck's just a blast. Go have fun with it. I think that's probably the last one, right? So I think I talked long enough. You got an idea. We got like 6 or 7 decks that you can... I'm not saying these are all ready for you to go out and destroy. I am saying these decks are ready for you to go out and destroy. But my play style might be different than yours. So you might need to make some tweaks, some adjustments, especially that Poe. Like I said, the list that I have up there doesn't have like the Poes and records that I probably have. But the rest of them I've played more than I played Poe. My teammates are playing Poe more than me. But good starting point for Poe, and the other ones I think you're pretty much ready to go. Just made me make some tweaks for yourself. So thanks for stopping by and checking out what we got cooking for set 4. We will see you in the arenas.